There comes a moment in life when the knee stops being just a body part and turns into a concern. You get up from a chair cautiously. You look at the floor before taking a step. You calculate distances that never existed before. It's not just pain, it's something deeper. The quiet fear of falling, of depending on others, of the body starting to command more than your will. And then a question appears that few dare to ask out loud. How long will I be able to support myself on my own? I've been there too, watching the body change without asking permission, seeing confidence shrink if you don't take care of it, realizing how a single joint can condition your entire day. And I understood something uncomfortable, but necessary. Not everything is lost all at once. Many things are abandoned little by little, at the table, in the routine, in the way you treat yourself when no one is watching. How much of your wear is really age, and how much is neglect? What would happen if you started reinforcing instead of resigning yourself? My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. Next, I'm going to show you a series of foods and a way of looking at your body, inspired by the sobriety of the ancient Stoics, that helped me recover steadiness not only in my knees, but in the way I walk through life. Not to promise miracles, but to give you back something more valuable, the feeling that you can still take responsibility. And from there, move forward again. 1. Sardines. There are foods that don't make noise. They don't come wrapped in promises or new buzzwords. Sardines are like that. Small, common, even looked down on by some. And yet, when I look at them today, I see them as a lesson in humility applied to the body. They don't look like much, but they support you. They provide what a tired knee needs to stop fighting every day against the silent inflammation that settles in over the years. Omega-3s, vitamin D, useful fat. Nothing spectacular. That's exactly why they work. I remember my father coming home from work with worn hands and a heavy step. He didn't talk about nutrition, he talked about fatigue, but there was oily fish on the table more often than you might think. Not because it was trendy, but because it was necessary. Eating to stay standing. Today, science puts names and studies to that, but the idea is the same. If you reduce chronic inflammation, you take pressure off the joint, the bone that carries your weight, the knee that lets you stand up without thinking too much. How long has it been since you chose a food thinking about that, and not just immediate taste? The knee doesn't fail overnight. It wears down while you keep going as if nothing's wrong. You rush upstairs, carry bags without measuring, ignore morning stiffness. Until one day, the body stops you. Sardines aren't a standalone solution, but they are a concrete gesture of respect, a way of telling your body, you still matter to me, and that over time shows more than you imagine. There's something deeply stoic about choosing what is simple and constant. Marcus Aurelius spoke of moderation as strength, not renunciation. Eating sardines is an act like that. You're not seeking refined pleasure, you're seeking support. And in that quiet daily decision, ground begins to be regained. Less inflammation isn't just less pain, it's more confidence when walking, less calculation before sitting down or standing up. Practically speaking, there's no need to complicate things or spend too much. Good quality canned sardines, drained, with a bit of lemon, pepper, parsley, and a drizzle of olive oil. If you mix them with tomato and onion, you have a complete, honest meal. You don't need large quantities, you need consistency. 2 or 3 times a week can make a real difference if the rest of your day isn't working against you. But let me ask you something that goes beyond the plate. When you choose what to eat, are you thinking about how you want to walk in 5 years, or just about calming today's hunger? Old age doesn't punish so much for what's missing, but for what isn't done in time. And this is one of those small gestures that seem insignificant until they start holding you up when you need it most. Don't expect to feel strong right away. This isn't a dramatic effect, it's a foundation. And when a foundation starts to be rebuilt, other things ask for their place. The question is, whether you're willing to keep building or if you prefer to keep improvising until the body decides for you. 2. Extra virgin olive oil. There are things you don't notice when they're missing, but you feel when they're sustained over time. Olive oil is one of them. It's not a supplement, not a quick fix, not a novelty. It's a base. And when the base is good, the body responds with less noise. Joints, especially knees, live better when the internal terrain isn't permanently inflamed. I'm not talking about sharp pain, I'm talking about that dull wear that greets you when you get up and that many confuse with inevitable aging. For years I saw how, in the Mediterranean world, oil wasn't a garnish, it was a daily decision. It was used with respect, not excess, but with consistency. No one debated whether it was good or bad, it was simply understood that it nourished and protected. Today we know it contains compounds with real anti-inflammatory effects, influencing how the body manages damage and recovery. But even without studies, the body appreciates coherence. How long has it been since you thought of what you eat as a way of preparing for tomorrow? The knee is a hinge. If everything around it is stiff, rusted, or overloaded, that hinge suffers. Olive oil doesn't lubricate the joint like a machine, but it does improve the context in which that joint lives. Less systemic inflammation means less daily pressure, and less pressure means more room to move without fear. Not to run marathons, but to walk with dignity, to climb a step without negotiating with pain. I'm speaking from everyday life. Cooking for yourself when the kids are gone, when the house feels big and quiet, can lead to neglect. Bread, something quick, whatever. And that's where an abandonment begins that isn't seen, but is paid for. Going back to using olive oil raw on vegetables, legumes, fish, or eggs is a simple way to restore order. It's not gourmet, it's respect. Garlic and oregano, nothing more. A small gesture that repeated builds something solid. Epictetus insisted on distinguishing what depends on you from what doesn't. The passage of time doesn't depend on you. How you feed your body today does. And that daily, almost invisible choice is a form of character, not because it makes you a better person, but because it makes you less vulnerable in the long run. Eating well doesn't prevent aging, but it does prevent arriving there weakened ahead of time. Don't cook the oil until it burns. Don't turn it into something that loses its meaning. Use it as it should be used, with sobriety. Observe how your digestion responds, your energy, even morning stiffness. Don't expect quick miracles. This is quiet discipline. And discipline, when it's real, starts to show right when many have already given up. The uncomfortable question is this: if you know something simple can improve the terrain where your knees live, why do you keep postponing it? Maybe because caring for the basics doesn't earn applause. But it's precisely the basics that will support you when the body starts demanding payment. And we're not done talking about that yet. 3. Turmeric. There are words that become fashionable, and when that happens, it's wise to look at them with some suspicion. Turmeric is one of them. Suddenly, it shows up in capsules, in quick promises, in overly enthusiastic speeches. But behind that noise, there's something older and more serious. Turmeric wasn't born as a supplement, it was born as a habit, as part of a cuisine designed to sustain the body for years, not to impress anyone. Over time, the body cools down. I'm not talking only about temperature, but about slowness, stiffness, that internal rust you especially notice in your knees when you stand up after sitting for a long time. Turmeric has been used for centuries to work on that persistent inflammatory terrain. Today, science studies its active compounds and confirms something traditions already sensed. It can help reduce that internal noise that wears you down without warning. But it only works when treated with respect, not as a desperate impulse. I'll be frank, Taking turmeric for a couple of days and quitting because nothing spectacular happened is useless. This isn't a painkiller, it's slow, almost invisible work that requires patience. And here something deeply Stoic appears: the ability to sustain a practice without needing immediate results. Seneca warned about anxiety for quick effects. The body, like the mind, improves when you give it time. At home, when I cook for myself, I often make a simple soup or a lentil stew. That's where turmeric comes in, along with black pepper and a bit of olive oil. That's not a minor detail. Pepper helps absorption, and fat does its part. Natural yogurt, if you tolerate it, can also be a good ally. It's not complicated, it's routine, and routine, when sober, ends up being a form of deep care. Think of that common scene. You sit in a low chair, talk for a while, and when you stand up, your knee complains. It doesn't scream, but it makes itself known. You take a few seconds, support yourself with your hand, make a face no one comments on. That moment isn't random. It's the sum of years of small decisions. Turmeric doesn't erase the past, but it can help keep the present from making it worse. Are you willing to incorporate something simple with the consistency it requires, or are you still waiting for a solution that demands no discipline? There's a frequent temptation to turn everything into capsules and shortcuts. I don't go that way. I prefer real food, conscious gestures, repeated acts. Preparing something warm, smelling the spices, sitting down to eat without rushing. That also orders the mind. And when the mind is ordered, the body follows more easily. That's not poetry, it's experience. I won't promise turmeric will take away all your pain. That would be disrespectful, but it can be part of a kinder terrain for your knees if you understand that caring for the body isn't an event, it's a way of being in the world. And there are still important things to review because inflammation isn't fought on a single front. 4. Ginger. Ginger has something the body recognizes immediately: warmth. Not an exaggerated heat, but that gentle push that wakes up what was dormant. With the years, you start to feel the body becoming slower, colder inside. The joints, especially the knees, lose fluidity. It's not always pain. Sometimes it's stiffness, clumsiness, lack of response. Ginger steps in there, not as a heroic solution, but as a reminder of movement. The ancients used it to activate, to help the body get going. They didn't talk about inflammation or molecules, they talked about circulation, energy, getting things moving again. Today, its effects on joint discomfort and mild pain are studied, and the results point in the same direction everyday experience already taught. It's not a strong painkiller, it's a constant companion, and that, for an aging knee, can make the difference between avoiding movement and daring to move. I think about those mornings when the day starts slowly. You get out of bed carefully, take your first steps measuring the ground, waiting for the body to wake up. Ginger doesn't eliminate that moment, but it can make it more manageable. A simple infusion, a warm preparation, something that tells the body the day has started and it can still respond. How often do you give yourself that margin, or do you just resign yourself to stiffness as if it were a sentence? In my kitchen, ginger isn't exotic. I grate it and use it in pumpkin soup, in vegetable stir-fries, with fish. Sometimes I mix it with lemon and a bit of honey, being careful not to turn it into sugar in disguise. I'm not looking for intense pleasure, I'm looking for sustained effect. It's real food, integrated into routine, not an occasional potion. And when something becomes routine, it stops being effort and becomes character. There's a direct relationship between movement and confidence. When the knee feels stiff, the mind becomes cautious. You start avoiding routes, stairs, unnecessary outings. Ginger, by helping reduce that internal braking sensation, can be a quiet ally in moving a bit more again. Not because it gives you courage, but because it removes obstacles. And that, in old age, is a lot. Marcus Aurelius wrote about accepting the nature of the body without despising it, not forcing it, but not abandoning it either. Ginger fits that logic. It doesn't promise youth, it offers functionality. It helps you accompany the movement you can still do. And that movement, however small, is a dignified form of resistance against time. Let me leave you with a slightly uncomfortable question. Are you willing to do small things to feel a bit more mobile, or do you prefer to keep adapting your life to stiffness? Because every adjustment toward immobility is a concession that's hard to recover later, and there are still deeper habits that support or undermine your knees over the years. This is just beginning. 5. Bone broth. There are old customs that disappear not because they're useless, but because they require time. Bone broth is one of them. It's not quick, it's not flashy, it can't be improvised. And maybe that's why it says so much about how you relate to your own body. Making a slow broth is accepting that some important things can't be rushed, and knees over the years fall exactly into that category. As you age, the body no longer builds or repairs as easily. Tissues become more fragile, less elastic. The joint starts asking for raw material, not promises. Bone broth provides collagen, gelatin, and amino acids the body can use as a base to support tendons, cartilage, and structures that no longer regenerate on their own. Modern science studies it cautiously, without miracles, but with a clear idea. With consistency and context, the body uses what it receives. I remember an elderly neighbor, now passed away, who walked bent but steady. She didn't talk about health, she talked about habits. Every Sunday, she put a big pot on the stove with bones, vegetables, bay leaf. She said it gave strength. She couldn't explain why, but she did it anyway. Today, I understand it wasn't just nutrition, it was mindset. Using the whole animal, not wasting what sustains you. That's also a form of inner order. Making broth is a slow act. Bones, vegetables, a splash of vinegar to help extract minerals, low heat for hours. The smell fills the house, forces you to be present. You can't rush it without losing its meaning, and in the meantime, something settles. You cook for tomorrow, not just for today. That's an idea that old age benefits from, thinking long-term when everything around pushes you toward immediacy. Practically speaking, you don't need to drink it like bitter medicine. Use it as a base for soups, to cook rice or legumes. Integrate broth into real food. The body doesn't distinguish between noble gestures and functional ones, it only responds to repetition. And when repetition is good, the knee notices. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it notices when you get up with a bit less stiffness. Epictetus spoke of living according to nature. Nature doesn't waste, doesn't rush without reason, doesn't improvise what's essential. Bone broth fits there. It doesn't promise rejuvenation, it promises support. And support at a certain age is a deep form of dignity. Not everything valuable has to feel spectacular. When you stop giving the body what it needs to maintain itself, you start demanding it function the same anyway. And the body, sooner or later, collects that debt. The question isn't whether you can keep ignoring it a bit longer, but how much it will cost when you decide to listen. Because there's still something else that supports your knees without you always noticing it. 6. Legumes. There are foods that don't try to seduce you. They don't shine, they don't promise immediate pleasure, they're not associated with celebration. Legumes belong to that group. Lentils, chickpeas, beans, food for people who need to endure, those who work, walk, support. And when I look at them today, I see them as a direct lesson for tired knees. Not everything that helps feels extraordinary, but almost everything that supports is simple. Over the years, weight becomes a delicate issue, not for aesthetics, but for load. Every extra pound translates into direct pressure on the knees. Add to that blood sugar imbalance, which inflames, wears down, and hinders recovery. Legumes help quietly. They provide plant protein, minerals, and fiber. They satisfy without excess. They bring order without punishment. They're not a shortcut, They're a base. I remember times when I ate in a rush without structure, snacking on anything, not out of hunger but inertia, and the body paid for it. Heaviness, inflammation, fatigue when walking. Returning to legumes was returning to a way of eating with a beginning and an end. A hot plate, a spoon, a rhythm that also educates the body. And when the body is ordered, joints stop being permanently defensive. In ancient times, legumes were the food of ordinary citizens, not luxury, but consistency. They provided endurance. Today we know a diet with good fiber and protein helps maintain a more favorable body composition and reduces overall inflammation. But even without knowing that, the body feels it. Fewer spikes, less anxious hunger, less unnecessary load on the knees. Preparing them doesn't require talent, it requires intention. Vegetables, cumin, bay leaf, thyme. At the end, a bit of olive oil to improve satiety and absorption. You don't need meat every day to feel strong. You need regularity. You need to eat in a way that doesn't push you to compensate later with excess. Have you ever asked yourself how many of your physical complaints come more from disorder than from age? There's a scene that repeats often at this stage of life. The afternoon goes on, the body feels tired, snacking appears, something sweet, something quick, and that habit, repeated, adds weight, inflammation, and wear. Legumes, used well, cut that cycle. They support you. They let you reach the next day without paying physical interest. Seneca said true poverty isn't having little, but needing too much. Eating legumes trains the body to need less, to function better. And that's a form of freedom. They don't make you immune to time, but they give you room to maneuver. And when you have room, you can decide better how to move. The question remains open. Are you willing to return to a food of endurance, or do you prefer to keep feeding habits that slowly take away your stability? Because knees don't wear out only from use. They also wear out from excess. And there's still something smaller, almost invisible, that influences that daily wear without always catching your attention. 7. Berries. There are small things that go unnoticed because they don't make noise. Berries are like that. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, they don't fill the plate or weigh in the hand, but they carry something the aging body increasingly needs: protection. Not spectacular protection, but quiet protection. The kind that works while you go on with your life, walking, standing up, carrying your own weight without thinking too much. Over the years, wear doesn't always come from big efforts. Many times it comes from the accumulation of small daily damage the body no longer repairs as efficiently. That's where antioxidants come in. Not as a technical word, but as a simple idea: reducing accumulated damage. Berries help lower that background inflammatory noise that doesn't hurt right away, but gradually degrades movement quality. They don't heal a knee on their own, but they help keep it from deteriorating faster than necessary. I remember a friend my age who said fruit no longer did anything for him, that it was for young people. He walked stiffly, always rushed, always tired. He didn't understand it wasn't about immediate energy, but long-term support. The ancients didn't talk about polyphenols or studies, but they knew something essential. Intense, seasonal fruits were repair food. They weren't eaten in excess, they were respected, and that respect had an effect. Today, evidence points in that direction. Compounds in berries are associated with better metabolic health and lower systemic inflammation. Plainly said, they help the body age with less accumulated damage. And when damage is lower, knees feel it. Not because age disappears, but because the terrain is less hostile. How many times have you underestimated the small just because it doesn't promise immediate results? In daily life, there's no mystery. Natural yogurt or kefir, a handful of berries, some nuts, no sugar-loaded juices, no turning something useful into a disguised dessert. Eat them whole, chew, respect the rhythm. That repeated gesture is a form of care that isn't noticed today but is appreciated tomorrow. And at a certain age, thinking about tomorrow is an act of responsibility. There's a very common scene. You're standing in front of the fridge at night, looking for something to calm anxiety more than hunger. A lot more is at stake there than it seems. Choosing something simple, real, without excess is also training temperance. And temperance isn't just moral, it's physical. A less inflamed body responds better. A less punished knee lets you move with less fear. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that deterioration is part of nature, but also that we can choose how we accompany it. Berries don't stop time, but they do reduce unnecessary damage. And there's a huge difference between aging and wearing out too much. The first is inevitable. The second is often an unconscious choice. If you know small daily gestures can protect your body from silent wear, why do you keep looking for big, late solutions? Sometimes what supports you most is exactly what draws the least attention. And we still need to talk about something that can't be bought or cooked, but ends up deciding whether everything else is sustained or abandoned. 8. Stoic mindset to support the body when it trembles. So far, we've talked about food, habits, decisions that are bought, cooked, and repeated. But there's something deeper that sustains all of that or undermines it without you noticing. Mindset. Because you can eat well for a while and still quit when the body doesn't respond as quickly as you hoped. And that's not the knee failing. It's the way you look at effort. There's a very specific moment I know well. You go out for a walk, and after a few steps, the knee speaks up. Not with sharp pain, but with insecurity. Your stride shortens, the body tenses, the mind starts negotiating. Turn back earlier, sit down, leave it for tomorrow. That inner dialogue is decisive, not because you should ignore the body, but because you must decide whether you govern it or it governs you. Stoicism enters right there, not as theory, but as a daily practice of sober courage. Eating well helps, of course it helps, but it truly helps when it's accompanied by temperance, choosing what suits you even when it's not what you crave, repeating what's right even when there are no visible results. That's discipline, and discipline isn't punishment, it's structure. It's the difference between someone who takes care of themselves when they feel like it and someone who does it because they understand their dignity depends on it. I've seen many give up not because of pain, but because of fear. Fear of falling, fear of looking ridiculous, fear of confirming they're no longer who they used to be. And that fear paralyzes more than any physical wear. Epictetus said it's not what happens to us that affects us, but what we tell ourselves about what happens. When the knee protests, you can interpret it as a signal to retreat or as a call to take better care and continue. The difference is in the mind, not the joint. I'm not talking about forcing yourself or denying fragility. I'm talking about walking anyway, attentively, respectfully, without giving up ground too early. Training what's possible, rebuilding confidence step by step. Dignity isn't in feeling no pain, it's in not abandoning self-care out of comfort or fear. Self-love isn't indulgence, it's quiet firmness. There's something spiritual in all of this, even if it sounds uncomfortable to say. Not a spirituality of asking for miracles, but of gratitude for still being able to act today. Preparing your food, moving, choosing consciously. Persisting when the body protests is a form of silent prayer, not to defeat time, but not to surrender to it. Let me leave you with this open tension. Everything you eat, everything you do, everything you decide needs a mind that sustains it when excuses appear. The question isn't whether your body will age. That's certain. The question is whether you will age surrendered or responsible, and that answer can't be bought, it's trained every day. We've walked a sober path. Sardines, olive oil, turmeric, ginger, bone broth, legumes, berries, and something that can't be bought or cooked, a mindset capable of supporting the body when it starts to tremble. These aren't tricks. They aren't quick promises. They're foundations, repeated gestures that over time restore steadiness, reduce internal noise, and allow you to walk again with less fear. Not to challenge age, but to inhabit it with more dignity. If I had to leave you with a single idea, it would be this. The body ages, yes, but neglect ages much faster. Every daily decision is a vote in favor of your autonomy or against it, eating with order, moving within what's possible. Thinking long-term when everything invites you to give up today. That doesn't make you invincible, it makes you responsible. And at this stage of life, personal responsibility is a deep form of freedom. My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. This channel exists to accompany you in the second half of life as you recover sovereignty over your body, your mind, and your decisions. If this message was useful to you, I invite you to subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and leave in the comments the phrase, "I am Stoic," along with the country you're listening from. I read all the comments, and it matters to me to know from which parts of the world this community of Stoics who don't give up and keep growing every day is forming. Next, 2 videos will appear that may interest you. Choose one and let's keep walking together, calmly, firmly, without unnecessary fear.